Hi there. Welcome to our introductory video on GRC365, or Governance, Risk and Compliance for Microsoft Dynamics 365. This product has been developed by a company called Axnosis and works with inside the Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations ERP system. When building a concrete wall, a builder knows to insert inside the structure steel bars that hold the thing together. Otherwise, the brittle concrete is likely to crack and fall apart in time. In the same way that you need these steel bars inside a concrete wall, a company needs a set of standards and functions that holds it together, if you like, a set of rules and norms. These rules and norms are generally referred to as the governance and compliance function. In order to understand GRC properly, you need to take a top-down approach. It's almost like the political system under which a company operates. It starts right at the top with the executives and the board who have to look after the governance of the organization, manage risk and opportunities, and ensure that the business complies with the relevant laws and statutes. In this session, what we're going to cover is an overview of GRC and introducing GRC365 as your new home for managing GRC if you're a Dynamics 365 user. I'll have a few demos of the GRC365 product, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the benefits. Typically in a business that doesn't have a product like GRC365, you have many problems. Islands of information, where information in different departments are dispersed and disconnected. Some of them are operating extremely well, but others not. You have disparate systems. Maybe people bought some software in the past to manage risk, but this risk system is not integrated into your core ERP business system. More often than we'd like, we see businesses running these processes manually, using spreadsheet lists and other such tools. Non-conformances, when they happen, are happening out of context and sporadically. And you don't get an overview of all of the non-conformances in your business. All you do as management is fight fires. There is no consolidated reporting, and going to the office every day feels like a big surprise. We understand these typical real-world problems with GRC, and that is why developing a comprehensive GRC product that fits inside the business system is so important. GRC365 is developed by Axnosis using Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations standards. It looks and feels like the Dynamics 365 application. It's developed using the same technologies and the same look and feel. It's designed for people who manage risk in the business. It's designed for the compliance professionals in the business, such as your internal audit department and your risk managers. And in particular, if you are an existing Dynamics 365 user, you will find the additional functionality extremely valuable for your business. Microsoft describes the Dynamics 365 value proposition as being a tool that helps you engage with your customers, empower your employees, transform your products, and optimize your business. Within Axnosis, we've added two additional dimensions, and that is operating safely and managing risk. And we have two products that address those requirements, OHS 365 for the safety side and GRC 365 for managing risk. Today's session, we're having a look at GRC 365. Again, from the board's point of view, the highest level, the big picture, it's important to understand that these things work together. Performance, governance, and management of risk do not happen in isolation. They are a part of an integrated whole. And that is why any product that you buy that helps you with any of these aspects needs to take into account the big picture. Performance needs to take into consideration your scorecards and your performance management side. Governance needs to take into account your compliance auditing function. And you need to be managing risk and opportunities together in a proper risk management process. Dynamics 365 is modern ERP. It is the new home for all your business applications. And again, to emphasize that GRC365 is not a standalone product. It works inside the Dynamics 365 environment. It looks and feels exactly the same. And once you've trained your users on Dynamics 365, they will be very comfortable with the GRC365 add-on. So we're going to have a look at the core GRC365 processes. That is managing risk, managing compliance, and managing performance. And what I'm going to do is to drill into each of these with a short demo and show you the software in operation. In addition to these three core processes, there are some supplemental systems, such as management of meetings, management of your legal registers, and your actions and activities. We won't be going into demos or any more detail about these things, but these are available and are covered in other demos. So let's start with managing risk in the business. Managing risk involves identifying threats, looking at the likelihood that these threats happen, and looking at the consequences of them taking place. This is called your inherent risk. What you typically then do is you put in place mitigating controls or measures to ensure that those things are mitigated or lessened. And together with your initial risk or your inherent risk, plus your mitigating controls, you then are able to assess what is called your residual risk. And that is the true risk to the business because you have the controls in place. But if the controls should fall away or not be effective for any reason, you are then exposed to the full inherent risk, of course. So what companies tend to do is they monitor and manage the effectiveness of those mitigating controls on a continuous basis using a system like GRC365. So we're now going to go and have a look at a demo of the risk management function within GRC365. I want to show you how the risk function works inside the GRC module. On the screen you can see your typical workspace. On the left-hand side is your standard Dynamics 365 menu. In the middle you have your blue tiles, which are frequently used functions, and these have been set up by your configuration team as part of your project. On the right-hand side we see all of the risk registers in the system at the moment that are currently open. And there are several other views here, like the baseline and the change risk registers. Now, a risk register is a container for multiple risk items. I'm not going to go into a safety, health, and environment example right now. The example I've chosen is an IT risk register. So let's open that up and have a look at what's there. The screen that you see now is the IT risk register 2019 register containing three separate risk items. In practice, the risk items list will be much, much longer, but I've kept this as simple as possible just for the demo. As you click on each one of these items on the left, the corresponding details on the right-hand panel change. If you click on the header at the top right, you're getting the macro information that relates to this risk register as a whole. And this, for example, would have information about who in the business is responsible, accountable, who is consulted, and who is informed. And there are various other categorizations of this register as a whole. It is important to realize that a register has a life cycle as well as the risk items inside the register. So this register has the status created, and the register at the top can be closed as a whole, for example, or we could change the status, or we could do things like send email notifications and use the full functionality of the Dynamics 365 environment. In the lines or the detailed view, we have all of the information pertaining to the specific risk items on the right. There's a lot here. If I scroll down, you can see there's several categories of questions and information that you can fill in. You can, of course, hide some of these. What is important to realize, though, is that each and every risk can be associated with other entities in the system. So right at the bottom here, we have, as an example, purchase and sales agreements. This means that whilst creating a sales order, you can add a risk in and assign it to a register. And that risk, as an example, might be the creditworthiness of a particular customer and you want to track that that is being managed and that there are proper compensating measures put in place to mitigate against the customer defaulting on payment. This ability to link risks to the core business processes inside the Dynamics 365 ERP system is very powerful indeed. But back to the risk itself, you can see that it's been categorized into departments and sites. There's a link if it's relating to safety, health, and environment to hazards. There's some description information, and there's a categorization that says it's critical. This one, unauthorized access to document libraries, has been deemed to be a critical risk. So in order to work through the details of that, you then open up each of these drop-down arrows here, and the system is very friendly in that it guides you through the information that you need to fully categorize and classify this risk and to do a proper rating together with compensating controls and the residual risk. So in this example, we're looking at why would it happen and what could happen. Well, incorrect permissions could have been granted to somebody. It's very likely that that happens from time to time. The consequences is that we might in our business breach our non-disclosure agreements because unauthorized people have access to confidential client information. So that is why this has been rated a very high risk. Going further down, you can put in place some tasks that are effectively your mitigating measures or your compensating controls that limits the risk or helps correct the consequences. So here we have Takashi being assigned to go and audit those document permissions. He needs to do it by a certain date, and currently it's not yet closed off. Further down, we have the classification of the risk in terms of its inherent and residual risks. And here we see that the inherent risk is that it's very likely. The current control effectiveness is weak because we're not doing these audits. And so we can calculate out of all of this information scores. We have the inherent risk score of 16, the residual risk score after our compensating control is in place, the target that we would like to be at if the control effectiveness is fully effective, and we see that there's a gap there, which tells us that this particular weak control of ours might need to be boosted with some other measures. Finally, I just want to go through, show you the basic probable cause. You can do some root cause analysis around the actual risk itself, where it occurs, any associations, any links to the performance management module in the system, any links to a compliance framework. This might be of interest to open up. These compliance standards might be, for example, your ISO standards. So all of your risks and your compensating controls can be correlated back to one of your quality management systems like ISO or one of your other compliance standards. The second process that we're going to look at is compliance. Compliance is the way a business conforms to standards, whether they're external standards, such as legislation is the obvious one, but there might be industry standards, such as your ISO standards, your quality management standards, or your environmental standards, or they might even be internal standards that you might have set up for yourself. Large enterprises might have standards for something like fatal risk controls. The process effectively involves defining your compliance frameworks, those that you manage your business around. You then look at the requirements or the inherent risks of those non-conformances in those standards themselves, and you define your audit requirements and you prioritize your audit needs and come up with audit plans. That auditing plan then results in audits being scheduled throughout the year, and those audits involve field work whereby audit teams go and have a look at how the business is operating. They observe, they interview people, they look for evidence in the documentation that's available. These audit findings are then recorded and basically used to direct corrective actions in the business. So in this next demo, I'm going to show you some of the audit and compliance functionality within the GRC365 module. So I'd like to show you an example of how the compliance functions work within GRC365. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on a scenario where an auditor is doing an audit on a ISO 14000 environmental quality standard. So what we have on the GRC dashboard, which you've seen before, is a set of shortcuts to various screens, and one of them is all internal audits and another is all compliance audits. And here you can see that we have a ISO 14001 audit approved for the Kangala site. So if you're an auditor and you need to go and do some field work, you can come through this screen, or as we know, you can go through the modules on the left hand side. You can click into governance, risk and compliance, and we can get to the same item by clicking on all compliance audits here. So there's your Kangala ISO 14001 audit. Now you can see that this has been approved, and what you can then do is you can do field work as an auditor. So let's click on the do field work option at the top here, and the system opens up all of the pre-configured clauses within that ISO standard, together with a description and the scoring that has been taken place. Now we've started this. You can see that the environmental policy has been scored with a 3 already, but for the rest there are no scores in the system. So what we are doing is we're systematically working through each of these clauses as we go out and interview people, or we observe how the business is operating. So let's take an example here, the next one, which is organizational roles, responsibilities and authorities. As you click on the item on the left hand side, any information on the right will be related to that line. Now we're going to score this one a 2, so I would just feed that into the system there, and you can see that the score here is now 66, whereas the green one was at 100. And in time that will change to an orange dot. It takes a little bit of time to update in the background. So when we went out and interviewed people, we discovered that there were several members of senior management that were unaware of their responsibilities under this particular compliance standard. So in the observations, we might make a note here. What we can also do is we can assign it to a responsible person. For illustration purposes, I will assign it to Pierre, and we're going to give Pierre a due date of 2 months time, and we might even suggest some improvements to Pierre, and maybe the suggestion here is presentation to the executive committee. So these are general observations. We've scored it a 2, and we can save this in the system. As we save it, you can see that the little indicator has gone to an orange triangle. So you can also enter the findings in terms of either a non-conformance or an issue. And if it's a non-conformance, you would fill in the details, the context, root cause, some of the evidence reviewed, your short-term solution, and the effect. If it's an issue, then you would fill in some notes. You would assign it to an issue register in the system. You would also assign it into one of the audit files and assign it to a responsible person. So if on the environmental policy one just above, you can see that that information has been filled in already. And so effectively this is like a big sheet which you fill in as you work through the audit. And at the end of this process, once you have all of the clauses attended to, you would then go to the top here, you would click on the post button, and the entire audit result is then posted to an audit file, which is then the official record of the audit. And then the audit file basically then goes through a process of distribution to the customer or responsible person, and then it is signed off. Finally, having looked at risk and compliance, it is necessary for a business to also manage its performance. Business performance management is not simply looking at the financial performance, although many companies tend to do that. What we prefer to do, though, is to take a holistic view of performance and use tools like the balanced scorecard to have a look at overall performance. Using a balanced scorecard requires you to define the perspectives that you're going to be looking at, identifying key performance indicators and goals within those various perspectives, and then using the data within the system to measure the performance and record that and display it for management to take action on. These report scorecards are generally graphic, very easy to understand indicators of how well you're doing. In addition to corporate performance or enterprise performance, within GRC365, we also have employee performance management capabilities. The demo is not going to cover that now, but again, that information is available separately. So in the demo, I'm going to have a look at how companies can use GRC365 to manage their performance. So I'd like to briefly show you an example or two of performance management or the performance scorecards. Just to note that some of this functionality is core to the finance and operations application, and only some of it is part of the GRC365 application. And this is a typical dashboard that a mining production manager would be very interested in looking at the sales and the cost of sales, production versus the cost of production in a mining operation. So the goal of setting up your performance management system within the finance and operations is to identify these key performance areas or key performance indicators and display them graphically in dashboards like this. So if we go back to the governance, risk and compliance option and have a little bit of a look on the right hand side here, we see that there's a balanced scorecard function. And a balanced scorecard consists of key performance areas and key performance indicators and perspectives. So let's go and have a look first at the perspectives. Now, each company might vary slightly on this, but essentially most companies use 4 perspectives. They look at the internal processes, they look at the customer view, they look at the financial perspective, and they look at the learning and growth view. So those 4 dimensions, if you like, or perspectives, are used to make sure that the overall performance of a business is properly assessed. So under these performance perspectives, we have key performance areas and key performance indicators. And I'm just going to show you, just to conclude, a typical set of key performance indicators. Here we have standard finance and operations predefined indicators, and this will have been set up in the system already. There's a very short list here, but we could measure effectively any parameter inside the finance and operations database and pull that through to a key performance indicator. And if we go to the key performance areas, this is a little bit more comprehensive. So a key performance area, for example, I've just got one configured here. We might say how much training has actually been completed in a year. It sits within the learning and growth perspective. And then under the key performance area, we would then add key performance indicators out of the list that we saw just now. So configuring this can be quite involved and obviously needs a very good understanding of the way the business measures its own performance. So in order to summarize, GRC365, as you can see, has many benefits. It helps you leverage the next generation of business applications within your Dynamics 365 environment. It helps you manage organizational performance by surfacing and making visible your KPIs and presenting them inside your balanced scorecard perspectives. It helps you manage your risk processes in a very comprehensive way. And of course, as we've seen, it helps you with your governance and compliance function in terms of conforming to your own compliance frameworks and those of the industry bodies and legislation, and helps you plan and manage your audits. This has been a very thin slice and high-level overview of GRC365 by Axnosis. For more information, please visit our website, www.axnosis.com, as well as have a look at our YouTube channel for other demos, webinars, and videos. Please, if you have any questions, contact Axnosis and your account manager, and we'd be more than happy to help you. Thank you for your time and for watching.